Hey there, friends. My name is Jim, and boy, a lot can happen in a week, right? I stopped talking about Ukraine for a couple days, and everybody loses their minds. Putin says he was joking about wanting Kiev, and Biden's accidentally tells our troops they're going to Ukraine. And that's just from yesterday. Well, today Biden's in Poland making a speech filled with the generic war propaganda of, the whole, we said he would invade, we didn't want him to invade, but now it's time for World War III. Now, I know I've said it before, but it deserves restatement. This invasion is not just Putin going crazy. Even though I think it's not the best idea in the world, and I personally stand against brother wars, you have to be honest and admit that the West has been isolating Russia and blaming them for every evil since right before Trump got in office. And push eventually comes to shove. Beyond that, since the Russian invasion, there's been a lot of confirmed information coming out of just how embedded the CIA and US State Department is in Ukraine. And all the talk about false flags going around made it almost impossible for him to not invade. I mean, I guess he could have been done what Muammar Gaddafi did and give up in WMDs and play nice, because then... Oh, wait. We killed him after that, and Hillary Clinton laughed like a Disney villain.
That is the land of unconfirmed reports.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
Did it have anything to do with your visit?
No, I'm sure it did.
The only honest take anyone can make on this right now is that our leaders, all of them, are making rash decisions acting like the global supply chain that props their regimes up will always be there. But the moves they've already made will change the geopolitical landscape forever, and I'm not sure anyone realizes just how much of a painful transition this is going to be. So before we get started, I just want to remind you that you guys are how I get these videos out there, because YouTube doesn't like me. So if you could just go into the title bar, right click on the URL, send it to a friend, wife, brother, sister, whatever. And if you think what I do is actually valuable, feel free to visit me at Locals, Patreon, or my website, jimmyjams.xyz, linked in the description below. Let's get into it. So as I film this, President Biden just finished wrapping up his speech in Warsaw, Poland, and yeah, it was pretty bad. I mean, he didn't fuck up quite as badly as the other day when he said there would be US troops in Ukraine soon, or the day after that when he said any use of chemical weapons by Russia would be responded to by illegally using our own chemical weapons against Russia.
If chemical weapons were used in Ukraine, would that trigger a military response from NATO?
It would trigger a response in kind. Whether or not you're asking whether NATO would cross, we'd make that decision at the time.
And my final question, because you're heading to Poland tomorrow, do you think that getting a...
But at least he didn't end the speech by saying we would nuke Moscow. He did, however, say something that caught my ear at the time, and his aides are already racing to fix it. During part of his speech where he gets mad and starts yelling all indignantly, he whispers and he starts screaming, "It's your fault!" He decided to throw in the phrase, "For God's sakes, this man cannot repain in power." Now, of course, this could totally be seen from the Russian side as the United States and, by extension, NATO, directly involving themselves in this war. But even if they don't take it this way, you can guarantee that the sound clip will be played at every Putin rally for the next 1,000 years. Putin's been saying for a long time that the Western cabal of neoliberal and neoconservative political elites have colluded and plotted in dark, smoky rooms to get rid of him and install a Western puppet in his place. And now he has the verbal, confirmation that that's true, and that's indeed what they want. For the White House's part, they were quick to put this up before the speech had even actually concluded. This went onto their website. And they do this kind of thing a lot. And I mean a lot. I'm one of those weirdos who listens to all the speeches and statements to the press, and I have to say, it's like they've completely lost control of his messaging, but nobody really cares because they know the legacy media will report what the White House says he meant, not what he actually said. I mean, I get it. You can't forget the apocryphal quote from Barack Hussein Obama that seems to be the truer and truer as time goes on. "Do not underestimate Joe's ability to fuck things up." Let's take a look at that other flub that I mentioned, the one about sending your sons to die for Ukraine, and see if you agree with the White House's spin on it.
And you're going to see when you're there, and some of you have been there, you're going to see women, young people stand in the middle of front of a damn tank, just saying, "I'm not leaving. I'm holding my ground." They're incredible.
Now, to me, that sounds like he slipped and said something that he wasn't supposed to. Something that he knew about in advance that maybe wasn't supposed to be revealed to the public yet. But hey, I'm just an unverifiable nobody. Don't trust your lying eyes and ears. The incredibly high IQ individuals at the White House noted after that, though, quote, The president has been clear. We are not sending U.S. troops to Ukraine, and there is no change in that position. So, debunked and fact-checked, I guess. We aren't going to send troops into Ukraine, and anyone saying otherwise is just inappropriately editing his speeches. Come here and look at our carefully edited compilation of him saying so. Anytime Biden says anything inflammatory, the White House just spins it in another direction, and the rest of the media just follow whatever the staffers say, regardless of what the actual president said. They know what he means. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? He's a puppet on strings being guided from place to place, made to nap in the sun in his rocking chair until he's needed to put out a statement and then sequestered back to his hiding place. Really? I've thought this since the beginning, and I know he kind of deserves it, but this is elder abuse. The man has fucking lost it, and he doesn't need to be shoved into high-pressure meetings with people much younger and smarter than him. He needs to be in hospice care watching daytime TV and having lunch with his grandkids. Supervised. I mean, he's a creepy guy. You can tell Jill Biden has wanted to be the first lady since she was in pigtails, which, ironically enough, was around the time when they met, and she babysat his kids for his first wife, and all Hunter cares about is continuing to make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of his father's connections. He may be a senile communist moron, but he is an old man, and it's time for him to rest. But, of course, instead of doing that, he's decided to go to the classic American route of blowing something up. Only this time it'll lead to the total destabilization of the global marketplace, and if you want to see how that ends, check this video out. The truth is, as annoying and silly as Volodymyr Zelensky is, and how meme-worthy his ridiculous antics are, that man is not the one making the decisions. He was plucked from an obscure comedy channel where he played the president to do so for real when the US backed a coup that overtook the democratically elected government, and since then, he's just been doing what he's told. All of the terrible shit that Putin claims went down in Donbass over the last years were done by Zelensky, but at the behest of America. We spent $20 billion over there with the express purpose of turning the people against Putin, and because of that, along with years of the whole Russia hacks elections, Russia's the real problem, blame every bad thing in US politics on Russia, Putin finally decided to go in and end this nonsense once and for all. His terms from the beginning have been pretty clear: allow Donbass to have independence, surrender any claims to Donbass and the Crimea, and sign an agreement to never join NATO or host their troops or weapons. The only reason this is still happening, the only reason for the continued loss of life, is because the West won't allow Zelensky to agree to this. However, nobody living in Ukraine is aware of this. The media has gotten them into such a frenzy that if someone's to speak Russian instead of Ukrainian, they get tied to poles and beaten.
Ну кому ты так натрусишь, хуйня, ты чепуха, блин, баб.
What you see there is not people fighting for democracy or for love of country. What you see there is people gone feral on their countryman for Western propaganda. Suffice it to say, it seems like nobody in this entire fucking thing has a functioning frontal cortex. Now, again, I am not one of those losers claiming Ukraine is going to win and the Ghost of Kiev is going to team up with a Reddit battalion and rape all the Chechens back for revenge or something, but Russia has made some piss-poor decisions in this fight. Putin obviously was of the belief that Kiev would fall similarly to how Crimea fell, with them seen as liberators from the Western slave system, but instead the American and Eastern European propaganda was stronger and actually lit the fire of nationalism under the butts of many previously fence-sitting civilians. Unfortunately for the Azov battalion and people like them, in the unlikely event that Ukraine actually pulled out of this with full sovereignty, their heads would be the first on the chopping block. It's pretty much the same blueprint we made when we trained the Mujahideen to fight Russia, and once we finished, they were immediately labeled terrorists. They didn't have a hero's parade. As so the battalion will. Do their leaders, after fighting for years against the machine to set up a National Socialist political bloc, think they'll be given free rein to be heroes to the public? Nah. And you can already tell by them changing their logo from an outright World War II German symbol to a standard Ukrainian map with Azov slapped on it. Nah, dude. If you want a good metaphor for this, go watch American History X. It doesn't matter how much gear you have, aesthetic means nothing when you team up with people like the Rothschilds, Soros, the Rockefellers, JP Morgan, and literally every other single global homo megastar bent on destroying Western society. So, Putin had thoughts that his forces would be seen as liberators, and it would all be sewn up in a few weeks. And now that that's surely out of the window, the Kremlin seems to be looking to save face a little bit. In this first month of the attack, the Russian fighters have used unorthodox, seemingly illogical tactics and made a lot of simple mistakes. You can see the majority of POWs were young conscripts and old, shitty tech, not the well-trained veterans who fought with modern vehicles and weapons in Syria, so many of us assumed that they were being held back in case NATO decided to intervene and Russia had to have its strong hand behind its back. Well, this is still possible, since 85% of the force put aside for the invasion are still on the Russian side of the border. However, they just put out a statement that really smacks to be of sour grapes. The other morning, Russian MOD came out to say that the fighting in the east had all been a ruse and they never meant to capture Kiev after all. No, this was always about freeing Donbas from an impending ethnic cleansing, and now that Azov is mostly destroyed, they're claiming that their denazification and demilitarization is complete, so now all that's left is ensuring a land bridge from Crimea to Donbas, and then they've won. To be completely fair, though, if you actually listen to Putin, he never said he planned on taking Kiev, and those conclusions are what they asked for when going in. But I can't help myself from thinking that he encountered much more resistance than he thought, and has now shifted the goalposts a little bit. Still, this war was never about which regime held a bunch of empty land. Now that Ukraine has lost its port to the Black Sea, it'll be unable to ship its exports without outside help, and both NATO and Ukraine have admitted they won't be joining each other, leaving a buffer zone between him and NATO while forcing Ukraine to use up a majority of its fighting resources attacking him. However, I'm of the opinion that Putin will not stand by for Zelensky to lead the newly captured nation, so I don't think this will end soon. Really though, looking back at the way Russia fought in Afghanistan and Chechnya, unorthodox tactics the West doesn't really understand aren't anything new coming from them. Well, just as it looked like things were starting to chill out a bit, Poland has stuck its nose where it doesn't belong, and this really encompasses what I mean by every one of the modern-day leaders being brain-dead. Today, a former general of the Polish land forces made another statement in the "let's turn this territorial dispute into World War III" saga, saying that Poland should move to claim a little place called Kaliningrad from Russia. Now, this is a little spot in Eastern Europe separated from Russia proper, and for some reason it's okay for Poland to invade a sovereign country, but not Russia. As I've said before, Poland has been the NATO nation pushing for intervention harder than any other, with their government very nearly sending out their entire fleet of MiG-29 fighter jets before the US told them to cut that shit out. For some reason, they've totally forgotten how badly the West has screwed them in the past and are ready for a rematch against Russia. I don't know, maybe they're just crazy, but the point here is that nobody is in charge. The Western elites are in a pissing match with the Eastern oligarchs, and we're all pretending our military is just as capable as it was in Desert Storm. Well, guys, I hate to point it out, but if you think Russia has a meme army now, what do you think it's going to look like when we start fighting? Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Have a great night.